Hey everyone, Tactics here with another guide to help you achieve your dungeon portals and get your Keystone Legend achievement, where this time I'm going to be taking you through a +10 Rookery run from week 1 of the patch, showing you that the pulls that we did and also giving you some tips and tricks in order to help you and your group get your 3K rating and unlock that brand new mount. As always with videos in this specific series, we're going to be doing some larger pulls here and implementing some skips in places compared to my pug friendly route that I released earlier on in the season, but we're still going to try and avoid doing anything crazy that you may see players pushing for that 0.1% Mythic Plus title doing. But if you're interested in those advanced strategies, I'm going to be putting out an entire separate series later on in the patch discussing those routes in depth, so make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Otherwise, let's get into it. Where to start off, we have a pretty decent sized pull at the beginning of the dungeon here, which we're going to end up lusting. We're going to grab this pack here with 2 casters, as well as the pack behind me, which is all just tank damage mobs. We are going to end up lusting this pull because not necessarily this pull is dangerous, but that we need this bloodlust up in about 10 minutes to line up with another dangerous pull. So if we hold it here at all, you're just not going to have it in time. This dungeon also did receive a 2-minute reduction to the timer this week. It's not going to be a big deal for this one. We're going to be well under that timer, but it is something to keep in mind here that you are only going to be able to fit in 3 bloodlust. So if needed later on in higher keys, you may see people starting to hold this first bloodlust for a pull, 2-4 minutes in, because you basically have 8 minutes to send that first bloodlust, assuming you're sending your other 2 bloodlusts on CD, but you have 8 spare minutes with a 29-minute timer. Moving in here, we're basically going to combine 2 packs at a time with the goal of not having too many of these Thunderer mobs overwhelming us. So initially here, we have the 1 Thunderer and we have the 1 Rookguard. The other thing here too is pulling multiple Void Riders is a big no-no. Wild Lightning, not Wild Lightning, they do channel damage to the entire group. And that is very dangerous, especially in combination with the Energized Barrage. So that's really what you need to be worried about. If you are targeted by this Energized Barrage at the same time the Void Rider does his lightning ability, the channeled lightning damage, you need to press a personal. The healer is going to manage healing for the actual AoE from the Void Rider, but the person taking the barrage is taking excessive damage. So that's your defensive, and of course, you need to be kicking this thunder 100% of the time while that is happening. That is also a way to die on this pull, is if this localized storm is going out, energized barrage going out, and lightning bolt goes out into one of those same people. Very, very, very bad. So these pulls, this pull at least is not super dangerous for the tank specifically, but there's quite a bit of that random damage which you need to keep an eye out on. Same deal. We're just going to go around the room here combining pulls. You can see here, this is going to line up with our damage CDs. So this is why this is more a dangerous pull. And that's also kind of how it's formatted. You do like a not super dangerous pull and then a bit more of a dangerous pull because you got a couple casters in this one, which have that purgeable buff as well. So if you have purges, it can be really nice to get rid of this buff on the mobs in the corners because it does give them a casting and attack speed increase. And that makes this pull definitely a bit more dangerous, even though there's no AoE mob. Because like I said, the AoE mob, especially at this key level, can be fully carried by your healer. It's not like excessive damage. It's the combination of the other random damage with it that is kind of problematic. From here, we're going to skirt behind the boss a little bit here. Watch this pack die. Run around the boss. And then the problem with this boss is that when he goes into the intermission, his hitbox gets giant, right? And so because of that, almost every single cleaving ability cleaves off the boss to any remaining trash in this room, making it extremely hard to skip anything in this room unless you want to pull it with the boss. So if you're looking at higher keys, if that gets changed, you'll definitely skip packs in this room. Specifically the next pack we're facing, this is just more of the same, really, Thunderers with a Void Rider and a Storm Rook, so same deal as that first pull. But you ideally want to skip that triple caster in the corner, right? So if they ever change it so that you aren't automatically aggroing everything in the room when the boss goes in the intermission, you will definitely be skipping that pack. But you're going to see here, we are going to pull it because, well, we don't want to pull 3 of those casters with the boss. So we're still going to time this with another pack, as you'll see here. But this is conveniently no caster. So again, that is why the pulls are designed in this way, why we're pulling the packs together that we are, to try and minimize the number of Thunderers. Obviously, this pack still has 3 Thunderers because one of them has it, but if this was a 4 Thunderer pack, that would just be crazy, right? Like, it'd be way too much. And if this had an AoE guy in it, that would also be way too much because you're going to be letting some of these lightning bolts go off, right? There's no way around it. There's no way you're going to fully kick this pack. So again, that is kind of why the pulls are designed in this way. And the route, by the way, is going to be linked in the description below if you want it. Then we get the first boss here. Pretty straightforward with nothing else in the room. Basically, you're going to want a very light defensive for every crashing thunder here, and just spread out for it, of course. Boom, spread out. It's not even really super dangerous on this key level. Onto 12, if you have more gear, you're probably also going to be able to just kind of eat it. Onto the higher keys, you may need a very light defensive on it. Always start this phase on the off the grates, as you can see. So these grates here, this is what I'm talking about when I say grates. The beams always start on these 4 grates around the room. So that means you should always start in the non-graded area of the room, and you just rotate left or right depending on which random direction the lightning torrent goes. That's this entire boss fight. It just repeats like that the whole time. There's not really much to talk about here. It's not super complicated, so I'm going to fast forward and skip this. I do want to touch on the buff in this dungeon, which we tried to find on PTR, but we couldn't. They just weren't spawned in on PTR. But basically, you get these feathers, and there's these chained storm rooks all around here and also lower down. And if you slam into them with your heroic leap from the feather, you get like a 5-minute damage buff. It's a pretty small buff. It's pretty short duration, but it is something. So be aware of that. You can slam into them and get the buff. This buff right here on the top right. You see my mouse. That's what it is. Very light damage. That's it. We're going to be coming down here. We're going to be just skirting around the 2 packs in the corner here. So you can watch how we do this. We go up here literally and just walk left. That's it. Nothing is needed. No soothes, no shroud, no nothing. And we're going to chain this here into the pack behind it. I'm just making sure everyone's here. This is a double caster pack. So again, you need to be careful with kicks. Obviously Prop Paladin helps out a lot with that. And the main thing in this area is pulling 1 diffuser at a time, because these circles and the arcing void going out here absolutely own. So once again, make sure you're not in that circle. Make sure you're getting kicks when that circle is out, because that's very, very dangerous. Having a curse spell is helpful, but obviously we only have 1 of those in our group. And so we can't get all the curses in this pack. So the person with the curse needs to be aware that they're dropping circles and potentially make sure they're getting away from people. This is you're not having a lot of space in these corners, right? So you need to be very, very careful when pulling these mobs here. And then from here, we actually are going to be doing a bit of a skip. So let's fast forward here. So this is a skip where we hug the corner here with Shroud. Now, I don't believe Mind Soothe works on these guys. These guys are aberrations. So, there's not a ton of CCs that can work with them. Sleepwalk does work on them, but like things like Imprison, things like Mind Soothe, I don't believe do off the top of my head. But we are going to Shroud here. You can invis pot this as well, and the goal is just to skip again those big scary guys. Doing another pull with them in it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks, and so that's why this skip is in here. And again, because we were forced to pull so much stuff in the first boss's room, we need to drop count somewhere in this dungeon, and this is like a really value skip to do it, in my opinion. Crusher here into the double oracles. This would be our big damage pull, but you can see here we're going a bit fast. So one, our CDs aren't quite up yet, and our CDs are going to line up basically with Bloodlust, which isn't quite up yet. So we're kind of here. Ideally, we'd pull the double mobs in front of the door here into this as well, and that would be our big lust and cooldowns pull. But we're just going a bit fast here, so we end up stalling a little bit here. This is a pretty dangerous pull. You got the triple crushers. Reminder, these crushers do an AoE, like a 4-yard or 5-yard AoE around the target they hit, so you need to be loosely spread for them. And of course, you got the double oracles. So you need to be careful. As soon as you add these mobs in, you do not want oracle cast going off when the big circle's on the ground and it's sucking everybody in, dealing a ton of damage. Very, very bad. And so you can see here, this is where it gets super scary. Pop Bloodlust. Defensives are going to be super good here, right? We're sitting on a toss spell ward out. We're sitting on, got Zephyr available. We have Mass Barrier available. We have healer cooldowns committed as well. We're going to use them on we use healer cooldowns for the first one. We have other things for the second one. Basically just organizing, making sure, assuming we have CDs planned out for 2 full casts of these circles, and then we kill them before the 3rd is the goal here. A lot of damage going out, but that's exactly why, Bloodlust. There is also 1 crusher that we add we're supposed to add it after the casters are dead, just to make it a little bit more safe, because we do need 1 more crusher's worth of count in this area. But that's why we delayed it. We waited for Lust and CDs. Once we got them, we pulled it in. And actually, we didn't even end up using our defensives here, so that would have been much safer if we had used them. But that's the thing. Make sure you have something planned for each spawn of those circles for your group here. And then we're going into the second boss with the Afflicted Citizens here. Just grab them all, get a little bit of fun onto the boss. Be careful, tanks. These guys do kind of randomly melee a little bit harder than expected, so just be aware of that. Pulling the boss here, and this boss has been weird. So on PTR, it did seem like this guy only targeted ranged players specifically. However, like this right here, you'll notice that he will target players that seem somewhat close to melee. And I think what's happening here is that what the boss has is a a range away from the boss, which counts as you being at range. And if anyone is at range, they're eligible targets for that leap. So if you have someone out at range and all the melee are considered in melee, I don't think he'll jump to them. But if the melee are even like this far out, like as far as we are right now, this counts as at range. That's how it seems to be working. Again, I don't 100% know, but basically you need to have one range person who is clearly at range, and everyone else needs to be like under the boss to avoid being targeted by Crush Reality. This also targeting pets, by the way. Looked like that was right on the pet potentially. So keep that in mind. This ability seems to be functioning a little weird at the moment. So we'll see if that ends up changing. But until then, that again, if you're even a little bit away from the boss, it seems like you can be targeted even if you are a melee player. It's not specifically targeting ranged only players, so keep that in mind. That's kind of why we have all these weird puddles. But in an ideal scenario, you'd be baiting all these puddles towards the same area and just kind of rotating around the room here as ranged players. And like where you really get owned as melee is right after the dark gravity here, because this dark gravity is going to go off. Melee have to leave the boss, and then he casts Crush Reality right after that, and it seems like all the melee are now eligible targets for this. Like I think we're going to target here where we're away from the boss, and then boom, instantly targeted the melee person because they're now a ranged player. It's weird. I hope they change it, but that's how the boss is currently functioning. Other than that, in terms of how we're bouncing this dot, because that's very important. There's two ways you can do this. So way one, let me rewind a little bit here to show it. Way one is you can have this bounce to your tank first, then bounce to another player that didn't have the buff, and then bounce back to your tank. That works totally fine. Your tank just presses a personal for that second one. You take a 300% damage amp, but it's not a big deal. The other way you can work is you can just have the first person passes to a second person passes to a third person passes back to the first person, because by then their debuff does expire. So it depends on how you want to do it. Concentrating the damage on your tank here is pretty good, I think, because people are in danger, specifically if you have this dot when this Crush Reality hits. Boom. This is the dangerous part, especially on higher keys. We had a mass barrier there. That's why our health didn't move that much, because we had a full barrier on us. But that's when you would want to press a personal if you are the person with the dot. And so I think concentrating some of this damage into your tank is a good thing. I was the one with the dot there, so all of a sudden that's infinitely more safe, right? So that's my general thing. I prefer putting 2 stacks on the tank, but again, you can just trade this between 3 people, and the first person, if they're the last person, they won't get a second stack. You can also trade this between 4 people. It's effectively the same thing. But again, I like bouncing this between melee if possible. We have 3 melee here, so that's convenient. And then range never need to get involved as long as they just bounce their initial one to the melee. And again, this is always the closest player. There's no longer an AoE effect. They got rid of that, so that's very, very nice. So makes that a little bit easier. But yeah, that's how I recommend handling that dot. Let's move on to the pack after this. Fairly straightforward here. Just a Crusher and an Ascendant. Keep it kicked. This magic dot that puts out in Feasting Void is also a healing absorb. So if you just heal it off, you get rid of all the damage. So healers be aware of that. Watch the pulls, of course. They hurt, as you can see. We're just going to jump down. There's not really much to talk about here. This pulls, there's a lot of afflicted civilians in this area, and like I said, they melee harder than you expect, but also you want to make sure that they die shortly after you engage the big rock guys, because the big rock guys will do this stacking buff ability, and they will get a buff for everything alive nearby. So if you pull them with like all these civilians into the rock guy immediately, he just gets a ton of those stacks, and he just deals a ton of damage. It's very bad. So you can see we're going to pull these afflicted civilians in 2 sets into these crushers. We're going to kill these civilians, and then we're going to go into the pack, I believe, unless the crushers are super low. If the crushers are super low, we'll kill them. But yeah, if they're not super low, we'll go into there. They're kind of low, so we're probably going to kill these. But if these are like 40% health, if you did this a little faster, we would just go in with the crushers. That's totally fine. 2 extra stacks is not the end of the world, but 8 extra stacks is bad. And you'll see it here. We're going to pull these guys, and these civilians that pull with the mob, if you don't kill them fast enough, he'll gain stacks from Void Extraction here. Boom, you can see he gets 13 stacks. So everything for the civilians and the 5 party members. So that is what happens there. We pull these guys into the guy after this. We probably should have waited until his next Void Extraction cast here. He does interrupt himself, so that is valuable because this is based on health. We did push him below this health threshold. That's what triggers it, in case you didn't know. It's 40% or 35% or something like that to trigger Unleash Darkness. So we did interrupt it barely in time there, but yeah, we should have probably waited to this phase before pulling those guys in, just in case we didn't interrupt that. But we did it easy, never punished. Then we're just moving along here. We have to kill all 3 of the Void Ascendants on this platform in order to trigger the boss. And namely, you really kind of need to clear everything here unless you want to play with a guy in the corner of the platform, which is definitely not ideal. So we're going to just kind of go around here. Again, Void Ascendant, not super exciting to talk about here. Next Void Ascendant. This is another pull. So our rogue, I think, goes AFK here. So we're going to kill this Void. Usually what we'll do, again, we'd kill these afflicted civilians, and then we'd chain into the pack in the corner with the Rockman, so not give the Rockman the afflicted civilian buffs. But yeah, I believe our rogue just goes, he's like, oh shoot, I like the door or something. I don't know. He goes AFK here, so we don't end up doing that. But that's what we would do. At this point, we take him to the corner. But you see, yeah, there he is. Rogues, man. Can't trust him. Unbelievable. So we just end up killing that and going into the corner alone, and he's still AFK. But, he'll eventually show up. That would be the chain. Nothing really to talk about here. Last pull is just a stone man and a caster man. Be careful during this overlap of him doing the low health cast, and if it ever overlaps with the feast, that can be a bit scary. But we kill the caster first. Then we go into the boss here. So this boss, we basically split it up into 3 platforms, right? I'm just going to go away from the party. Then we have, one person assigned to get the stone in this platform, one person assigned to get the stone in this platform, one on the left platform, and the healer, again, is going to stay central. Don't giga spread out. You get a very large speed bonus when you have to break your shard, so you have tons of time. So you don't want to play like over here as a DPSer or over here as a DPSer. Play close to the middle area, but just lean to one side, lean to the other side, and then use your speed with that buff, or use your mobility for a mobile class to get those far rocks when they spawn. You don't need to play super far away from your healer. Show your healer some love, especially if they're an evoker. They definitely do not want you to be giga spread out. Like you can see here, like they're playing like pretty close together. Tanks, Oblivion Wave, have a personal. This can also be avoided. You can use like if you leap, if you roll, like as a demon hunter, as a monk, it's actually quite easy to avoid it. But it's something that if you're not comfortable doing, you can just instantly die if you try and avoid it and don't press a defensive. So it's not needed to avoid at a 10 to 12 in key level. As you start going to the higher key levels, like 16, 17, 18 plus, maybe you're going to start to see tanks dodging that every single time, but at least for now, it's not necessary. A lot of damage in this fight does come from Unleash Corruption here. This is the dots that go out, and you can see we're just kind of, they instantly dispel these ones. We probably shouldn't be doing this. We are kind of expecting to own this boss, but as this boss fight goes longer, and here's the breaks like I'm talking about here. I don't need to go super far. As this boss fight gets longer, clogging up your melee space is a bit troll here. So you want to make sure that you are at least backing up to get dispelled, especially if you're range. Just backing up if you get the dot as range, and either using a dwarf. If you have an imp dispel, it's really useful in this fight if you're a warlock, or just waiting to get dispelled near the back of the room is very useful. Melee, obviously, you need to be communicating with your healer, because like melee, you're losing a ton of uptime by AFKing out there. But like here, what probably should have done is, I think it was on the healer, so he probably should have just rolled out himself and then dispelled himself. Actually, I wonder if he revival, because both of them went off. I don't know, but he probably should have rolled back and dispelled himself there. But either way, it's going to start being problematic for us, because clog up the melee. The melee are going this way, and so it separates the melee from the range here, because our range is now going to be playing on this side. Something to keep in mind. Damage amp phase is going to start shortly here. This is where we're going to lust. And we have our cooldowns here. You see we did not pop cooldowns on pull. We ended up popping cooldowns on the pull before the boss. So when we hit the boss, then we would have cooldowns with Bloodlust for this first burn, getting him down as far as possible. CCing the orbs here. We're going to get him a little bit below 50% health here. Pretty good first burn. It's going to end up being 3 burns total for us. Very similar to the first boss in Misaterna Scythe, where you're going to have this boss length be as long as it takes you to get burns down. So good burst damage is very valuable on this boss fight. It drastically shortens the duration. And from here, I have a terrible angle, but you can see the melee of the boss is at least decently large. You can see the monk hitting it from here, but our puddle management's awful, right? Don't do this. Trust me. You don't want to do what we're doing in this corner. This is banned for sure. Again, if you're ranged, you can, if you get the debuff, you can blink out, dash out, be generally not stacked in melee to not drop puddles there. If you're the healer, you can pre-position out as well. If you're melee, you can communicate with your healer. You can run out. If you have a dwarf racial, you can immediately run out and dwarf it to get rid of it, that kind of thing. Just try not to do this. Melee won't be happy. Melee won't be happy for sure. Otherwise, again, we're just slamming. I'm rotating defensives on this wave because I'm not going to be worried about dodging it at this key level. Pointing the frontal, obviously, way down into this corner, so it's not near anybody. It's not going to hit anybody else. And then just whenever the rocks are spawning, we got the mage here, the evoker dashing over here, and then both our healer and our rogue are available in the second area, depending on where they actually spawn. And again, here it is. I see the guy. He does step behind me here, so be careful. This is partly due, I think, to the fact that we ate up all the space here with puddles, and so he got kind of forced here. I probably should have stepped to the right here slightly because I should have seen that he was there. And I should have stepped to the right slightly to make sure that frontal was even more off the edge, seeing that he was kind of crunched by space. So that, again, that's just the thing that happens when you are space crunched, right? It can lead to issues like this. So don't do what we did. As you can see, the puddles do start to disappear after about 2 minutes. It's about 2 minutes for these puddles before they start to disappear. So it's not the end of the world forever, especially if you have a long fight. Make sure you're pressing defensives too, by the way. Oh, this is what happened here. The mage died, so I looked away and we got an ad. Ads are very bad. So if you die with that circle, and you don't adjust quickly by the one person that is spare, you're going to have an ad. So what we end up doing here is we save damage for the ad, and they all just pop their damage to kill this ad specifically. So we do end up surviving an ad. Again, don't recommend it. This was all kind of spiraling from the fact that we ran out of space. So that space management, very good on this fight, okay? Very, very good. So make sure you are doing that. Not every run is super clean, but this one we still ended up getting in time, even considering, the fact that we lose 2 minutes here on week 2 of the patch. But there we have it, guys. Hopefully this helps you out in the Rookery, and if it does, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos like it, including guides just like this one for every single Season 2 dungeon, plus more advanced routing videos as well if you're looking to push for that 0.1% title. Of course, I need to thank my fantastic Patreons for their continued support making all this content possible, so thank you, and I'll see everyone in the next video.